if it's me, I'm trading Gausman this year. I'm trying to get off Gausman. He's got $50 million left, which is really on the next 2 seasons, by the way, which is really not bad. Like you think about it, Blake Snell this past offseason, he got $62 million for 2 years, right? That's like the going rate for someone who has been in the Cy Young conversation the last couple of seasons. Absolutely. But he's 33 and a half years old. There's been a velocity dip. Some of the teams that he struggles against the most are in your own division, and some of the teams that you're chasing the playoffs. I don't know if that's something that I'm betting on is going to get better from a trade value standpoint. And if they're really dead set on keeping Vladdy and Bo and extending these guys, and this is real, you got to start to look around and wonder what other pieces are going to get moved. Anyways, Robert Murray, MLB Insider for Fansided. What's up, brother? How we doing?
I'm great, man. How are you? Sounds like a heated discussion about the Jays this morning already, huh?
Well, here's the thing. I kind of went into sucker mode just a little bit, and I'm mad at myself because they won 5 of 6, and I went, this would be so Blue Jays to beat the Orioles in the series, and then you watch those two teams play, and just, yeah, they're different. It's very different. And even Hayes, who's the one guy that hasn't been going for Baltimore, goes up against the Jays and goes against Gausman. He's owned them, and he continues to do it. And it just, again, it does feel like two teams that are a bit worlds apart. And one of the things, too, about Kevin Gausman in the past is he is an ace, right? He has been an ace, which the definition of that is it's a stopper. It's a win. And for me, I thought Toronto needed to get off on a good foot, and they needed to get off with a Kevin Gausman win. Anyways, I went with this Gausman take. It feels a little hot takey to me, especially in a baseball season where he's got 50 innings pitched. And the general consensus around the Blue Jays is that this would be not a rebuild or a teardown, but rather a pivot. But what do you think the market would be like for a guy like Kevin Gausman, who is having a down season, who does have a little bit of term left, and has had this pedigree as recently as the last 2 seasons?
Yeah, I think there would definitely be a market. And I think what you ended up mentioning before I came on the show was spot on, was that, I mean, he's controllable. He's signed for 2 more years at about $50 million. And if you look at Blake Snell, where he signed for over $60 million for over 2 years, I mean, it's better value there for sure. But if you look at Gausman's numbers this year, they're down compared to what they've been in the past. I mean, his ERA is currently, if I'm not mistaken, is about 4.6.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his strikeout numbers are down, and it's going to have teams probably wondering, like, what's going on there and what to necessarily make of that. If you look at his FIP, it's about 3.7, which is a lot more respectable and shows that there may be a sign of better things to come later on in the year here. So I do think there would be a market, but I think with the Blue Jays kind of signaling that it wouldn't make sense for them to trade Bo Bichette or Vlad Jr., we'll dive into that in a little bit, I'm sure. It would signal to me that they want to compete in 2025. And if they want to do that, I think they would want to keep a guy like Gausman. So that would kind of make me lean toward them trying to keep him. But at this point, I think they have to listen, because you have to know what's necessarily, or you have to know what's out there just in case you're blown away with an offer. And you know how pitching needy these contending teams are. So you can't rule anything out there, especially with his pedigree. But my guess is he'd probably end up being kept in Toronto rather than moved.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense too, especially if you are trying to compete next year, right? Because you're likely going to lose Kikuchi. You're going to probably have to trade him. Manoah at this point of his career, even though he showed you something, it's hard to rely on him. They started the year with Bowden Francis, and there was real hope that he was going to be a guy, and he doesn't really look like a guy. Chris Bassett is another year older, and again, I'm not sure what the long-term future is there. You've got a lot of holes with your starting pitching moving forward to next season that you're going to have to fill, and I don't know if they can do that all through free agency, and certainly there's nobody really coming up within the organization that's supposed to kind of fill those spots. So I get the case for keeping him. I just think if you're looking at it now, and that being your best case scenario is, hey, here's a controllable guy with some upside and who has been great, and maybe it just hasn't been working well for him. You're buying kind of lowish, but you're still paying a premium. I don't mind that move for Toronto, especially since I'm not sure if you're just cutting through the first layer of skin, right? Like if you're doing a surgery on the Blue Jays this year and you're doing the partial teardown or the partial build, what are you doing if you're just moving off of Kikuchi and say like Garcia and Richards, right? Like, I like at this point, Justin Turner has zero value. I can't imagine what anyone would give up for him. Like zero, nothing. Like we're not even taking the money. Like, what is your read on that first layer of skin, Blue Jays, in terms of what it would net you back in a trade package, how much you could actually use those pieces to pivot for 2025?
Yeah, and we saw in the offseason, they didn't go all in on the strategy. They tried for like a Shohei Ohtani type. There was obviously rumors about Juan Soto. They didn't get him, and they kind of just pieced things together here and there. They got Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. They got a bunch of other different pieces, but it was never truly like an all-in direction, and especially trying for a star, and they did not get a star. So it was just kind of a failed offseason overall, and it's poured into this season. If they wanted to trade a guy like Kevin Gausman, I do think they'd get a pretty decent haul in return, especially with his pedigree. He's only 33, he's controllable. And with how pitching needy these contending teams are, I think they'd be able to build a market, and they'd end up getting decent value in return. But Kikuchi's going to end up being one of the better starters, most likely on the move at the deadline. As you said, there's not going to be much of a market for a guy like Justin Turner, although I do think contending teams could value his veteran leadership.
Sure. And
if they're able to get the Jays to eat a little bit of money in the deal, I think that would end up, that could improve the haul. It still wouldn't be that much overall. But if I was the Jays, and I would trade as many of the guys on expiring contracts as I possibly can. And I would enter the offseason with a different strategy and trying to free up as much money as possible by moving or trying to move a guy like George Springer. I know that's way easier said than done, especially with his performance and his contract. But if you're able to attach at least a prospect or even two to his contract to try to entice the team to move on, I think that's something you actually have to explore. And if they're able to do that successfully, that would free up a lot of room on their payroll. It could allow them to do some different things in addressing different areas of the roster. They cannot repeat the same mistakes that they made this past offseason, because even coming into the season, you could just tell this team lacked an identity. It was not better than it was last year, and the offense is suffering. The pitching has struggled. It's a struggle overall, and they cannot repeat the same mistakes of last year, or of this year, I should say, because it's looked like a huge failure so far, and it's resulted in a lot of these questions, both tough and easy, being asked right now.
Well, and the fan base is especially pissed off because last season, even the front office admitted it was a slog. And the fan base went, yeah, we know. We need changes. And their move was no changes. Their move was, we're bringing in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and Justin Turner. And so, it's been a while since people here, I think, were this upset about what the product is, especially given what they thought was going to be a very, very successful cycle and has materialized into no playoffs. And now this year, it would be kind of a stretch to make the playoffs. Our Jeff Blair has insinuated that they've kind of looked at moving George Springer before. But when you're saying, get off the money, how much do you think the Jays would have to eat in that kind of move, though? Because he's still got a couple years left on his contract, and it's $25 million a season.
Yeah, I think they wouldn't have to eat the entire contract, but I think they would end up having to eat a fair amount. This is, I don't even know if I can speculate a number here, because I've heard the same thing as Jeff, but I haven't heard a specific dollar amount that they would have to eat or anything.
But there would be some interest around baseball. Teams would want him.
At this stage of his career, he's 34. He's hitting 211 this year, 4 home runs, 12 RBI. I'm thinking it could end up being tough to build a market for a guy like that. Obviously, his defense, he's known for it, so there could be some value there. But if you're able to attach at least a top prospect or two, I think maybe that could end up enticing a team. But it would have to be the quality of prospects, because if you look at his numbers this year compared to what they were previously, it's trending in the wrong direction. Yeah. I think that's pretty safe to say.
Yeah, this is why I get into stuff like, well, maybe you have to trade Gausman, is because if you're telling me to get off the Springer money, you got to send out a prospect. I don't know if you've looked at what the Jays farm system rankings have been recently, but pretty much universally, they're known as they don't have anybody. Like, that's their main thing. And I can't talk. I've talked to multiple prospect people. I've tried to get as positive about it as possible. And I can't get someone to come on here and be like, nah, there's actually a better depth. It's the most rosy outlook of it that I've gotten is essentially they've got a good chunk of low ceiling guys with some quality floors. But that's not what this team needs. This team needs some splashy injections, and they need guys that do offer the selling of hope and the offer of selling a ceiling. And so if you're going to try to move off of Springer's money and repurpose that this offseason, it's going to cost you a prospect. Like, I don't know where that leaves you for being able to make other moves. This year, when I talked to you, it was difficult for the Jays to be making some of these trades. We were looking at it and going, hey, could they get in on this? Could they get in on that? And it was very limited when it came to what their actual latitude was. Like, the Soto stuff was hilarious because you had people here writing these fake trades up like he was going to go for cents on the dollar or prospects that were, C and B minus prospects in the Jays farm system. And you saw the package that he ends up going for, and you're like, yeah, they weren't close to that. And so to me, that's why I kind of get to the stuff about, well, what does it look like if they're just trading Kikuchi? Like, what are you getting back for Kikuchi? And is this the front office to do it? Because last time they had a pending UFA pitcher and they were selling, it was Jay Happ. And granted, he had, I think his 2 worst starts right before the trade deadline, but they traded Jay Happ, who I think was the number 1 pitcher on the market in 2017 or 2018, for Drury and Billy McKinney. So, yeah, it's hard to feel like you move a guy like that, a pending UFA pitcher, even if he's at the top of the pile, and you're going to get back something that is really going to change the outlook of your offseason.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to start off with the Springer thing here. Is I haven't heard necessarily that they're trying to trade. I want to make that clear. Sure. That was my own speculation. But I understand the skepticism at this point, and it's really. It's led to questions, I mean, at least among the fan base, and I'm sure it's going to be coming in the media at some point here if it hasn't already. Like, do the Blue Jays in the offseason think about making changes at the leadership level? It's the mistakes that they ended up making in the offseason, everyone saw it coming, that they did not do enough, that the direction, it didn't seem very clear. And they're paying the price for it now. And it's just, if I was a Blue Jays fan, I'd be irate. And obviously, you don't know what you're going to end up getting for Kikuchi. I mean, he's a rental. He's been very good this year. He's been the Blue Jays' best pitcher. But realistically, what can you expect for a guy like that in return? Mm-hmm. You have to ask, I'm curious where you stand on this. If you were running the Blue Jays, obviously, we saw what Ross Atkins said the other day, but would you trade Bo Bichette or Vlad Jr.? Because I know that's a very interesting discussion, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, here's the thing, man. I don't really see an option outside of it. It's hard for me to understand how the pivot works with both of those guys. Okay, so if you're not going to trade Gausman because you need innings next year, fine. Okay. So You're likely going to keep him, Barrios, and Bassett. But Bassett at this point, you're really hoping that he's a quality 4 or 5. All right. You don't have any pitching. You don't have any prospects. You are still going to be spending a ton of money. And also you're going to be spending more money because if you're keeping both of those guys, you got to extend both of those guys. So how are you building the team around them? That's the thing that I still don't understand. Is where are you getting the prospect capital from? Where are you getting the financial wiggle room from? Because, like I said, I don't think that it's very palatable moving off the Springer money. And then what? You're going to sign another free agent? Who is that big free agent bad? They haven't really shown a great level of creativity when it comes to finding ways to produce runs for this team. They've done okay with these fringy signings like the Brandon Belts of the world, and it's okay. And IKF has, I think, been a little bit better than people anticipated. But ultimately, this is kind of what I'm driving at with you is where the cut happens that goes beyond those pending UFAs. Because the rental guys on the market, I just don't think are going to fetch you enough for there to be a real feeling of optimism that you can go into the offseason with real flexibility and upside to materially impact and change this roster for the better.
Yeah, and it's totally valid, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up mentioning before the the discussion about the leadership or the potential leadership changes that I think the ownership has to evaluate in the offseason is because you look at the on-field product at the major league level, it does not inspire much confidence. You have below average offense and pitching at this point statistically. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the minor league system and it's incredibly underwhelming. As you said, it makes the idea of trying to move off of a guy like George Springer and like potentially attaching a prospect or two, it makes that really difficult. It shows no real signs of hope, but for now and in the future. I'm not trying to sound grim when I say that. I realize how grim that kind of sounds. But if you're trying to improve this team going forward, I think the idea of trading Gausman does make sense, because if you end up trading him now, and what is he making, about $20-25 million a year, somewhere in that ballpark?
Yeah, 25.
You can trade that. You can move him. You'd be able to get especially since he's controllable and he's got that kind of success in the past. I think you can end up getting a fairly decent haul in return. We mentioned his numbers before this year, but I still think you'd be able to get something pretty solid in return. And then you could save $20 to $25 million. And then you can try to reinvest that in the roster for next year while also improving your minor league farm system. I think there's absolutely logic behind it. I think it would make sense. It would be a tough decision for now because it would signal to that clubhouse, okay, this season's probably not going to result in a postseason appearance. And I mean, that would be the reality. But at that point, you would still have Vlad Jr., you'd have Bo Bichette for next year. You could reinvest the money saved from trading Gausman. Hopefully, and I mean hopefully, they reinvest more than just the money saved from Gausman into that roster because, I mean, I think it's clear to everybody just how much help this roster needs. It would give them flexibility. It would give them different ways to improve that roster. I think they should absolutely try to do it or at least consider it. They can't just move Gausman just to move him and
that's not
get
the point
pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
The
point I'm making is if there's real value in the idea that you get him for 3 runs and that he's cost controllable, and even if you get him, that there's not a ton of financial risk. Because again, $25 million a season for him, even if he's been what he's been this year, you're not upset with that. The idea here is that purely if you're not going to trade Vladdy or Bo, and you've only got the pending UFAs that you're going to move, I think that there has to be one other roster piece that gets sold at the deadline that really does make you feel like there's going to be a significant change going into the offseason, being with a little bit more financial flexibility, plus the added prospects that you inject into your farm system from the UFAs, plus a major piece like Gausman. Okay, but you mentioned like the offseason when it comes to this front office. What do you think if they do become sellers, it's hard to understand why Ross Atkins would be the one that's getting to sell, given the amount of time that it's been and that this is his baby. Like, this roster is his baby. Do you think that even if he isn't fired, he's going to be the guy that ultimately is making these moves?
Are you talking in the
this
year?
No, this year. Like, I'm talking this trade deadline. Who do you think will be calling the shots for the Blue Jays if they do, in fact, have to sell?
I think it would still be Ross Atkins. That would be the impression that I'm under. I know that's probably not the answer you wanted to hear, and that kind of confirms that belief. But I think that's probably the direction that this would go. That's my guess. But if it comes to that, like, obviously, as you said before, they haven't sold a major piece, at least pitching wise, since 2017 with Happ. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's been a while. We'll see if it trends that direction. We'll see exactly how it goes. But that's my belief. And I'll tell you, if he ends up running the show in the offseason too, I think the making a play again for Bellinger has to be something that's seriously talked about, because they need a star in the offseason. Or they just need a star in that lineup, because they just lack pop. They lack something there.
So, again, this is me just reading the tea leaves of some of what you're saying and also what is out there now. If the insinuation is that they're trying to get extensions done for Vladdy and Bo, and I believe him when he says that, because he was on, I think it was MLB radio this week saying that with our friend Jim Bowden. And if it's him running the helm, I don't think that they would be letting a guy who is, I would say at this point, likely to be fired in the offseason make such a major move, like make a trade Vladimir Guerrero or trade a Bo Bichette move. But that being said, Do you think there's at least potential for it? Like, is part of the reason why maybe we're starting to hear about this attempt at extensions now, that if it really feels as though it's not going to happen, that they will at least look seriously and hard at what a trade package looks like this season?
I think I would be pretty surprised if they seriously explored a trade package for either of those guys, just because they want to compete in 2025. That's the impression that I'm under, and having either of those guys gives you the best shot at doing so. If you look at Bo Bichette's case specifically, I think it would be really tough to trade him because he struggled this year. There's no way of sugarcoating it. It's been a down season for him, and if you trade him now, it would be for pennies on the dollar. And I can't imagine that would be something that the Blue Jays are in a hurry to do. And as far as an extension for him, if there was ever a time to do it, considering his track record, you have to expect that he'd bounce back. And with how he's performed this year, you'd be able to get value for him. But Bichette and his agent has to realize that as well. And I guarantee they do, which would probably have them a little bit hesitant to do an extension now, because if they waited, they could end up getting much more money in a couple of years or after the 2025 season when he becomes a free agent. So my guess is a deal probably does not get done there as far as an extension. I think the Blue Jays would be very wise to listen for offers for either player, because it never hurts to know what's out there. They're both immensely talented. Vlad Jr., I know his power numbers haven't been there this year, but he's still been a very effective player. And if you're able to get something or able to get an offer that is really intriguing, I think you absolutely have to listen and maybe even entertain it. But at the end of the day, I don't expect them to get traded. I think an extension for either player is probably unlikely, and they enter next year, or at least enter the offseason with no new deals in place, and also both in Toronto. That's my guess.
Yeah, it is funny looking at this being like, all right, so they're most likely just to trade the pending UFAs and hope that they get lucky on a prospect in that regard. Because again, those aren't going to be A+ guys. Those are going to be lottery tickets, guys who they're going to have to decide are a little bit further away or probably closer, but similar to some of what they already have in the lower ceiling guys. And then, you enter with both of your star players without contract extensions. And
it's a tough spot.
Yeah, it's just not. Yeah, it's not. There's not a lot of good coming from here, Rob. I need.
I'm sorry. Oh, man. That's one thing I pride myself on is bringing the good, and I'm not bringing the good. My apologies.
Okay, how about this one, though? If they did get extended, because you're right, they're in a tricky spot right now where Bo is having a dip in production, and he's going, no, you got to pay me for who I am at the end of every year, which is fair, because even the year that he had where he started worse than this one, he ended up with an OPS over 800, and he has the end of the season, which was incredible, that drives him into that spot. I would say that from what I've heard from some people, there's real question marks about what he looks like as a shortstop getting older, which maybe makes this thing a little trickier. There's also murmurs that winning is super important to him. And granted, you hear that from every baseball player, but ultimately it does come down to the dollars and cents. But what do you think an extension looks like for these guys? Because that's something that always has felt very hard to nail down, because neither of them has become quite their peers that have hit those $300 million numbers. You can talk about Vlad Jr. being a productive player. He ain't Juan Soto, right? He hasn't been that. And there was a time where we thought all those guys were going to be kind of lumped together. If you were trying to predict an extension that was going to get done within the next year for either player, what do you think the dollars and term would look like?
I'll tell you right now with Bichette, I think that's about as difficult of a projection as you can possibly imagine. I mean, entering the season, if you could have probably thought maybe at least 150, maybe 125, 150, somewhere in that ballpark. With Vlad Jr., I wouldn't give him 300. Not at this point quite yet, but I think, what would you say, 250 over? Trying to think.
You don't want to know my numbers. My numbers aren't good on either of these guys. My numbers are what are the prospects?
Do you hear them?
Yeah. No. That's it. That's my numbers are that there are really no numbers. That it's just I'm shopping.
Yeah, because I'll tell you with Bichette, it's such a difficult projection. It's his production this year has been it's raised a lot of different questions, and I'm really glad right now that I'm not his agent, because that'd be a very difficult projection if I'm having those contract talks. But I for Vlad Jr., I don't know necessarily if I don't think I would touch. I don't think I'd go to 300, at least not at this point quite yet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's very tough. I don't expect an extension to get done for either player. I think their value is going to be dictated on the open market, at least as of this point. Things could change, but that's my guess, is that we don't end up seeing extensions done for either player.
Yeah. Again, I know we're saying that this is unlikely, but that's why, again, the case gets a little bit stronger for trading one of them. If you don't feel as though you want to give either guy a big ticket deal, it feels like you're probably better off trying to move sooner rather than later on that, rather than being handcuffed this offseason and going, now, like, let's say you got to hire a new GM. And then, like, we just saw this with our hockey team, which is you hire the new general manager. There's a lot of work to be done with understanding the roster, and just to step into that role right away and go, hey, welcome to the job. Trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette, or give them extensions that aren't going to cripple our financial flexibility to build a competitor over the next 5 years. It's just like, what kind of world are you asking that person to enter? It doesn't seem like a good one. Okay. Last one.
No, and also I want to make a point on that. That same thing happened to Chaim Bloom when he entered Boston. Is like he was basically told to trade Mookie Betts, and I mean that was an impossible spot, and that defined his tenure.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if you look, because I threw out the $250 million number for Vlad Jr. That was just a number off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. But we're also looking. We live in the same world where Xander Bogaerts got 11 years for $280 million. I know that was a massive overpay by the Padres, but I mean, it's tough. I mean, the trying to figure out the value for either player is very tough, and I feel bad for if Ross Atkins is let go after the season, which I don't know. I don't know if that's something they're even considering. But if they have a new GM in place and they're asked to either trade or try to extend Vlad Jr. and or Bo Bichette, that is a very difficult situation to enter. Very difficult.
I didn't think Xander Bogaerts was going to get that crazy of money, although I didn't think it would be that far off. And just as a reminder for the people who listen to the show, who are like, yeah, JD, you got some good ideas. I was a big Jay should sign Xander Bogaerts guy. So it's just, I got a lot of dumb ideas. Too. Like, I'm not saying these are good ideas. They're just the things that I'm thinking about. Okay, so to me, when you're looking at the schedule for the Jays, I mentioned right before you came on, it does feel like they're trying to tread water, and hopefully they get hot and maybe they do a soft buy instead of a soft sell, or that they can at least try and push for a wild card playoff spot, because that would still likely, I think, be the ideal scenario for everybody involved, right? Especially if you're like the dudes with their jobs on the line. But when do you think they're going to have to truly pick this direction? Because it feels like everyone's going, oh, keep an eye on them, but no one's really saying, hey, these dudes are for sure available. It kind of looks like like the end of June, if they get through the stretch with now Orioles, couple series, a Yankees series in there, a couple with the Red Sox, one with Cleveland. It's a pretty tough go. They've got a series with Oakland here. But yeah, is your idea that they make this decision fully by the end of June? Like, what? I can't imagine that they push it all the way up to the deadline, right? And then all of a sudden they have to sell up against that.
Yeah, my guess is it would probably be middle of July is my guess, somewhere in that ballpark. Because I mean, as we talked about earlier, like they don't have that many like really strong trade pieces. I mean, at least as far as rentals go. So I can't imagine there's going to be many, if any, teams that are going to be in a hurry to try to jump the market for a Turner or a Kiermaier or a Yimi Garcia or Kikuchi, or I mean maybe some team ends up doing it for Kikuchi, but I mean I just don't think they have enough trade pieces where these teams are going to end up trying to jump the market and force the Jays to make a decision early. So my guess is it comes to middle July, and then those conversations become more serious as July goes on. So I wouldn't anticipate anything too crazy, at least in the near term here. But once mid-July and really the All-Star break gets here, I think that's when we're going to see the trade buzz involving the Jays and these 29 other teams really start to ramp up. And There's a lot of questions with this deadline. There is a ton of them. So, I mean, there's a lot more questions than answers at this point, but I think those answers are going to become more and more clear as July gets closer and also just gets deeper into July and past the All-Star break.
Well, that's the other part too, and I know we can't predict this as of today because we're talking about a month from now, essentially, a little bit over a month from now. But if you look at the American League, there's a case for a lot of teams to be buyers or at least to stand pat. The National League's a little different. I think that there's at least a little bit more depth of teams that would sell, but I'm not sure who has a ton of assets that are going to be attractive to teams around baseball. Like maybe the Rockies have a couple pieces, maybe the Mets have a couple pieces. But yeah, I would imagine that, Diamondbacks up in the National League, that none of those teams are really trying to sell. And if they are, it's not going to be consequential pieces. Is this at least shaping up today as a seller's market for the Blue Jays? Like if you're a fan, are you kind of rooting that it does go that direction? Because at least if you do sell those pending UFAs and guys that normally don't net you just a massive haul, that it could be a bit of an uptick given the amount of teams that are actually in the mix for a playoff spot now. Like that's the impact of the extra wild card.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to think because if you look at it, I mean, as you said, the extra wild card spot it gives teams an added incentive to try to compete. And we saw the impact it had last year, and it could have the same impact this year. I mean, we saw even Dana Brown say yesterday that he didn't see any scenario in which the Astros sell, which would eliminate Justin Verlander and any of their potential starters from the trade market. And then, I mean, obviously, like the White Sox have some trade pieces. I think Eric Fetty's going to be a really intriguing one. Mike Clevenger, I mean, he's a trade option. He's currently hurt right now, but I'm guessing the White Sox ended up signing him in the offseason or signing him during the season, I should say, with the thought of trading him at the deadline to try to get at least something back in return. But there's going to be, I think, at least as of this point, there's a limited amount of sellers. Mm-hmm. So it could end up absolutely having an impact on a guy like Kikuchi, or as we talked about before, if they ended up trying to trade a Gausman or entertaining that idea, there would not be as many options in the market, which would also allow them to maybe get more in return than originally thought. So, I mean, that's something you absolutely have to entertain as well. But a lot can change in the next 2 months here. But as of right now, it looks like it would be more of a seller's market than anything, which could end up playing into the Blue Jays' favor here if they do indeed sell.
Hey, buddy, I'm going to have you on, or hopefully I'll have you back on in about a month. And I would like it if it's a little bit, rosier, okay?
That sounds good. Yeah. Usually, people talk about me, and they talk about me being a golden retriever. I felt not like the exact opposite of a golden retriever on this. So my apologies to you and the Blue Jays fans for the kind of grim outlook here.
All right, little better, more golden retriever energy next time in about a month. Robert, thanks for making time, brother. I really do appreciate it.
No, for sure, man. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you here soon.
Yeah, take care, man. Robert Murray, MLB Insider for Fansided.